In 2014, writer Evan Skolnick published a book titled Video Game Storytelling. In it, he breaks down the various yet essential components to making a video game work well. One of these ideas, of course, was called Ludonarrative Harmony, or sometimes referred to as Ludonarrative Dissonance. To keep it simple, Ludonarrative Harmony is the cohesion or balance between gameplay activities and narrative or story elements. Doing so effectively not only keeps the player well immersed within the diegetic world of the game, but also makes you invested in both the character's motivations and the player's motivations. In 2017, Atlus came out with the latest addition to the Persona and Shinmegami Tensei series, Persona 5, a stylish, jazzy, and heart-capturing RPG about a group of high school students who use the power of their persona to help reform society. After a few hours in the game, it starts to become quite apparent how this game continues to engage the player even after long segments of dungeon crawling and monster battles. Persona 5 is a prime example of how it marries together gameplay and story elements in a way that entices you to play more. Here are 3 ways that Persona 5 carries ludonarrative harmony throughout the 100-hour heist. The typical Persona game consists of 2 parts. One part social life simulator as a high school student, making friends, studying, and working part-time jobs. The other is of course exploring dungeons, fighting monsters, and stealing treasures. This is pretty typical of Persona games, and in a broader scope, is also indicative of RPGs in general. But here, we're going to be looking specifically at Persona 5's Confidants. Confidants are what you might expect from hearing the term. They're special relationships between you, the hero, and the other characters or allies in the game. By spending more time with your confidants, you raise your confidant rank, how close you are to that person. Rising through these ranks nets you better abilities or quirks to help make combat much easier. In other RPGs, party members or allies to the main hero are met through story elements and cutscenes. But in here usually lies a stagnant flaw that other games or RPGs might have. It's that these party members are broken down into 2 sides. One side being the character you interact with in story, you learn of their personality and of their traits, and the other side of them is the character that you fight alongside in battle. There are 2 distinct halves of one whole. One part of the character is the ally you're building up and raising to be stronger through experience points, skill trees, or weapons. And the other part is their actual personality and voice. Most of the time, these 2 parts are always distinct and separate from one another. Persona 5 does a great job of bridging the gap between these 2 sides of character development. You can actively choose which party members to spend more time with and unlock more of their hidden abilities. As you continue to do this, you will begin to witness more of their backstories and learn about their place in the world of Persona 5.
If anything comes up, you tell me. I'll help you with whatever you need.
And as you and your party member's personal relationship deepens, said party member will trust you enough to eventually take a critical hit for you in battle, or jump in after your attack for extra damage. You truly begin to grow a partnership of trust and friendship with these people. They're not just characters for you to control in battle or tools to use just for extra damage. Characters like Ryuji, An, Morgana, they come off as actual living, breathing characters, and it isn't just through the story elements or the cutscenes alone, but what they're willing to do for you in battle is what makes them really feel alive and worth the time and effort to get close to them. And it doesn't stop there. Spending time with the shogi player Hifumi allows you to switch party members mid-battle. Dr. Takemi, or the gun shop owner, allows you to have more powerful healing wares and customizable guns. But not only does the Confidant system make the characters come to life, but it also gives you, the player, incentive to play the high school simulation part of it all. All of these bits and pieces of the story flow well into the strengths of combat, truly creating a cohesion amongst story and gameplay, and never makes you favor one side over the other. This aspect of the game is probably a lot more obvious and simple. Personas not only play a key role in the gameplay aspect, but as well as the story side. The most important part being that personas transform as confidants reach their max rank with you. You see, whenever you max out a confidant rank and fully develop a trusting bond with someone, that person's persona transforms into an even more powerful one. Remember how I said that the more time you spend with your confidants, the more of their background and history is revealed? When they've reached the end of their growth and have discovered a newly found resolve, their personas strengthen and transform. These elements together work towards making you grow to become more attached to the rest of the ensemble of characters. Not only do you delve deep within their pasts, who they are, and where they want to go into the future, but you also improve your strength in battle because of the working relationship between the plot lines and the combat. In this example, story isn't just story that's a separate breath to the whole experience of the game. Rather, gameplay and stories are woven together in a way that creates drama and care into both parts. You can actually feel yourself improving as you improve your bonds with characters. And this is important simply because you are no longer just getting stronger from leveling up. They've thought up a way to deliver bigger and better strengths, powers, and abilities to the heroes of the game in a way outside of the norm of combat and money.
Now I'm even more charming.
The last point is somewhat small, but I still think it's one of the finer highlights to this game. Without going too much into detail, the heroes of Persona 5 are essentially thieves who need to infiltrate the center or the heart of palaces. So naturally, they need to avoid conflict as much as possible and ensure that they're not seen. The ideas of sneaking up on foes to defeat them is more so promoted over running headfirst into battle. This is because it not only makes sense in the story for the heroes to sneak around and not get caught, but it also gives you the first turn in combat, allowing you to effectively, in one turn or so, end the fight much more quickly so as to not be daunted by the longevity of constant battles. They could have just as easily made approaching enemies in this game like any other RPG, where you simply run around and fight at random intervals, but they chose to add this extra layer of care and fluidity that really makes Persona 5 not only nuanced, but fun and challenging as well. This also helps to keep immersion of being a thief, but it doesn't end there. The alert meter also cements these ideas even more so. As the alert meter rises, the enemies become stronger and even harder to ambush. If it reaches 100%, the players are forced to retreat from the dungeon for a day. The sneaking aspect of this game doesn't necessarily spark anything new gameplay-wise, as these are somewhat fundamental aspects to a typical stealth game, but it's the fact that they've brought in these ideas into an RPG is what makes the entire experience carry its own identity. These ideas aren't just being brought in to create a different method of approaching combat either. It's a fundamental part of the story and the narrative. So of course, in order to keep the experience from breaking, Atlus has combined the gameplay elements to fit the story elements as well.
Thieves in the palace, full of tales and lies. We got naked.
The idea of Ludonarrative Harmony is a simple one in concept, but ever so hard in execution. It isn't always so full of gorm in games, but when time and energy are spent on the smaller details, the overall game ends up being that much more refined. After all, games are continually evolving, developing different techniques of storytelling and narrative structure. It only feels natural that gameplay and story are no longer being built separately, and are more so being handled as a whole. Persona 5 is a great example of Ludonarrative Harmony. In fact, probably the best example of it in gaming that we've seen in a while, combining incentives on both ends of the spectrum of the game. This makes for a fun and rewarding experience all across the board of Persona 5, and never makes for a dull, uninteresting, or unearned moment within gameplay or story. This is how Atlus's Persona 5 manages to steal your heart. Thanks for watching.